All right. Hello, everyone. If you can hear me, please type llama in the chat. Otherwise, I'll try to hear myself in the YouTube and see if we are live. All right. I'm super excited for today. I'm super excited to have with us artist Buffy Kaufman. But let me double check if we're live. We are! Woohoo! Awesome. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Maria and I am your host for today. And I am super excited to bring you another Etcher live demo. Now for today, like I said, we have artist Buffy Kaufman. Hi, Buffy.
Hi.
And just a reminder that today's demo is not a step-by-step. That is for the mini workshop. This demo is for our artists to showcase their process. So it's not a step-by-step tutorial, but we will still give you some great tips. Now, if you want to ask any questions to Buffy, please make sure that you type the word question in the chat in all caps. And that way I can scan it and find what questions you want answered. I am seeing them. And if I don't ask them at the moment, it is because maybe it's not relevant to what Buffy's doing at the moment. And I don't want to derail her process. But I am seeing your questions and I will ask them to her at the Q&A portion at the end. Now, we do these free online demos pretty much every day. So if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you can stay up to date and be alerted when we go live. Also, you can subscribe to our email newsletter and make sure to whitelist us because we've heard that we are being sent to spam. So yeah, make sure we're not being sent to spam. Now for today, please share today's link with your artist friends so we can have them join us and enjoy this lovely Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, depending on where in the world you are. I will also be dropping a feedback form at the end or halfway through. It takes 2 minutes and your honest feedback is essential for us to improving these demos. We also read every single comment, so please go ahead and type down all of your feedback there. Now, for today, Buffy, what will we be doing today?
Today we're going to be painting some greeting cards using the Golden Set by Etcher. We're going to be adding little silhouettes, cameos into them like this one here. And we're just going to have a blast playing with these awesome metallic paints, which are so great because you don't just get the shimmer, but look at this. You even get a value change, which is huge. So we're going to be doing these loose watercolor landscapes and adding a little bit of shimmer. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
Is that amazing?
Yes.
So cool. Anybody who's been following me knows I'm a huge fan of all things that are glittery and shimmery. So I was so excited to try these paints and I'm excited to be able to share them with you.
And before we get started, Buffy, I would love for you to show the audience what it's all about and give us a tour of your paintings.
Oh yeah. About the workshop?
About the workshop and your paintings in general.
Oh, okay. So I really love to do watercolor pouring. And if you follow my Instagram or my YouTube, you can learn more about that watercolor technique. And I'm also going to be introducing that in the upcoming workshop. It's a really great introduction to watercolor pouring. And it's a paint and pour method, which is where we will paint with water and then pour the watercolor in, move it around gently and get these amazing, beautiful, soft watercolors. So this painting here is one that I did, and this is in the paint and pour method. So this is the kind of painting that we can achieve during the workshop. Here is another one. And this one was done with Peerless liquid watercolors. And they are so wonderful to work with when you're doing watercolor pouring because they're already liquid. So it kind of makes it a little bit easier. But these are some of the techniques that we'll be doing in the workshop, learning how to use a liner brush to create the reeds and the grass lines, how to do reflections, how to mimic the shallow water. I'll also be showing you today and during the workshop a technique called stencil lifting. And once you've done your traditional painting, you can actually go in and bring up some highlights with stencils. And it's a really fun technique and it's a little a little bit addicting. I'll warn you. I'll warn you now. Yeah. You'll, like today we'll be using the stripes stencil and this cute little splatter stencil. But yeah, I'll just warn you now, you might end up buying some stencils because I did. Once I learned this technique, I have too much fun, but I was able to achieve these little water reflections, and this was almost black. So as you know, when you get to that dark in watercolor, it's really hard to come back to your light. So this is a real fun technique, and we'll go over it a little bit today and then more in detail in the workshop. And then this one's on sketchbook paper. And this one has some of the shimmer that we'll be using today. Look at that in the tree line in the distance. Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
So we'll probably be using the golden set during the mini workshop too, just because it is so fun to work with. So anyway, so that's what we'll be going over. A really nice way, an intro to watercolor pouring. And
Awesome. Then let's dive right in. How about that?
okay, we'll do. All right. By the way, I just wanted to give a thank you to Maria and Danielle and Hazel and all the staff at Etcher for number one, finding me on socials, inviting me to this opportunity and helping me with all the tech, all the admin, all the marketing and background that you put into this. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
So to start off with, the biggest thing in watercolor to me is color. I am fascinated by color, and if I can get that right off the start, I'm halfway there, over halfway there. So I wanted to go over the palette that I'll be using. These are Daniel Smith watercolors, and I'll be using the Hansa Yellow Light, Quinacridone Sienna, Quinacridone Red, Quinacridone Magenta, Phthalo Turquoise, and Phthalo Blue Red shade. So I teach at a school in the area, and these are the colors I use for every class. It really helps to have a limited palette that you can become familiar with, and you can start unlocking mixes and really be able to grab your colors intuitively instead of always having to worry about color theory and mixing. So you get to go from these vibrant, saturated colors, and with just a little bit of mixing, look at how you can get these nature-inspired muted tones. So I really love the shift that you can take with just this little bit of color. I also really recommend the quinacridones and the phthalos because they're transparent, they're non-granulating, they mix very well with each other. On this palette, the only granulating color technically is the Quinacridone Sienna, but as you can tell, there's really not any granulation in my mixes. So this is one more facet that we'll be going over in the workshop in greater detail, is unlocking some of these great color mixes. So, to do my warm up for today, I thought I would do a couple of the cameo silhouettes just to kind of warm up. And they're so fun to do. If you ever want to just practice trying to get the right shape or silhouette of whatever you're drawing, whatever you're painting, is such a good step. So if you're going to swatch your colors, why not swatch the shapes you're going to be painting as well? And I had to share my model. I don't know if I can add this after the fact to the references, but this lovely little egret posed for me. It was about 10 feet away from me, and he just, sat there striking a pose for about 35, 40 minutes. And so I got these great references. And if you can get an animal to pose for you, I really recommend taking as much film as you can. And then you have all the references you'll ever need. Speaking of which, here are the photos that we'll be working off of today. These two, I was lucky enough to capture myself at a lake by my house. Both of them are the egret in flight. And then this one is a still that I took off of a documentary, just as a loose reference to see how the reflection works on the water. It's really exciting how most of the time reflections, when we paint them dark. But if you notice, the reeds are the same color in the water, and the white of the egret cast down as well. So I thought those were really interesting to paint. And here were my first tries of each. So that one here. As you can see, these are just loose watercolors. They're not photorealistic. They're just relaxing, kind of moody, and just a really nice color study. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but this one, just to show how much of an artistic license you can take with these, is this photograph that I took would later become this painting. And I wasn't sure if just such a simple silhouette would work, but this painting was actually accepted into the Louisiana Watercolor Society International Show. So that was really exciting, that we don't always have to have every last detail in a painting. If we can capture the essence, the mood, the atmosphere, it is good. So first off, I'm going to take out a couple of these Etcher greeting cards. These are 100% cotton paper, cold press, which is what I'm familiar with. I think we'll start with this one here. And then if we have time, we can move on to the other two. Most of you have probably used watercolor sketchbook paper, and you never know what you're going to get. You don't know if the paper will be quality enough, but my techniques and methods are very heavy with liquid. I use a lot of water. So these greeting cards being able to hold up to the way that I paint says a lot about the quality of the paper itself. And Maria, just let me know if I go out of frame.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good. You're good. And I will also be dropping a link, everyone, to the postcards in case you want to check them out. Here at Etcher, we're trying to innovate and bring you different types of materials and more stuff that you might be interested in using. So we actually have this really cool postcards, and we are launching fountain pens August 13th at 12 noon New York time.
Yes, today I'll be using the watercolor greeting cards by Etcher. And then also I had mentioned in the beginning, the golden set. So these are their pearlescent watercolors, comes in this cute little tin. It has the little finger hole in the back. And like I said, not only shimmer, but even a value change. And the way that I get these ready to paint is I'll just put a little water in each one to kind of activate it. And that way, when I go to pick up some paint, it'll already be softened by the water. I also have this little cute Etcher palette. That's what they're known for, right? Everyone probably wants this first out of their supplies. And I just love the size of it. I could take it in the field with me to paint. Lastly, I'll be using a number F pencil by Alvin Paramount. And I love it because I can sharpen it on both sides. And it's also an F, so it's very hard, so it doesn't smudge. And like when you use a 2B pencil, often you get smudges everywhere. But with an F pencil, not so much. And really quick, these are the King Art Radiant brushes. I actually like 3 different series by them. I love their Radiant, their Original Gold, and their Finesse. But I'll be using this number 2 liner brush, the angle shader brush, and a round. All right. Let's paint. So yes. I want to
I also wanted to let you know that we are hitting the 15 mark.
Perfect. Okay. So I like to start just by barely shaping in the bird, because I'm going to do most of the shaping in with my brush. I find that no matter how much time I spend drawing it, I will almost always autocorrect when I start painting. I don't know why this is. It's just something in the way that I hold the brush and do the brush strokes. So as you can see, I'm very loose. And something nice too is that it may end up being, it might have more of a shape of a goose or stork, you know, different types of birds, but we're just gonna get the essence of a white bird in the marsh. So pretty much we'll just barely sketch in the bird, and then I'll figure out my water line as well. And again, this reference photo, I'm not going to be a slave to this. I'm just going to use this as like a recommendation. I like how I did this one, how I have some of the reeds to each side to kind of showcase him. So I'm just gonna put a couple little lines to remind myself where that'll be. And then I like to get the hard part over with first, which is the bird.
We have a little bit of a request if you can zoom in a little bit more.
Yes.
Just the bird is a little bit out of focus, yeah.
Are we in focus?
We are, but we're cutting off the paper a little bit. There we go.
Better?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my mixing palette? Let's see. Okay. So right now I'm just mixing a little bit of quinacridone sienna and a little bit of Hansa yellow light and getting a nice soft yellow color. And I'll probably put just a touch of magenta in there to have kind of a deep orange, because it's going to have, like I was mentioning earlier, I use a lot of water. So I'm going to start cutting this little guy in using the angle shader brush to bring his shape up. And I will be able to erase most of my lines towards the end, so I'm not too worried about that. And I'll just blend this out for now. And maybe I'll just take a little bit of the orange down over the water line. Maybe there's a little bit of a reflection coming down. And once you get going on these, you know, if you do a couple practice ones and get the feel for it, you'll start moving faster and having a really good time with them because they're loose and you're just making the suggestion. So now I'm going to mix in some of the, I'm going to mix in some of the phthalo turquoise right into this peachy orange mix that I already made to get a nice green started. And I'm just going to zap right around the bird's face just so where I go wet on wet, it doesn't go into his shape. Give me 5 seconds.
No problem. And if you're all interested in Buffy's watercolor pour workshop, you can sign up at the link that I just dropped in the chat. It is on August 27th.
So with this cool little Ranger heated craft tool, it has heat and very low flow. So if you're ever wanting something that you can do just this, just zap it really quick to calm the wet part down, I highly recommend it. And now I'm going to take this olive blend and I'm just going to start adding, and it's okay that the paper is still a little wet because I dried the part around the bird. So I'm okay if it blends out into the paper in the background. Now, if you hold your brush farther towards the back, you're going to have a looser brush stroke. If you hold it all the way to the front, you're going to be really tight, and that's more like for photorealism and very detailed painting. But if you're going for a loose watercolor, try holding it from the back. Try doing some wet on wet, because that automatically is going to loosen you up and give you more spontaneous moments with your watercolor. So you can make some short work of some background foliage there just by letting it be wet on wet into the background. Now I'm going to go ahead and mix in a little more phthalo turquoise right into the same mix. Just to give a little bit of variation in color. And since it's a little bit darker because it has a little more pigment, I'm going to use it towards the bottom where it's wet to start deepening where the reeds are touching, coming down to the water. Now that the top is drying, I could add more detailed pieces. And between the part that was wet on wet and the parts that I'm adding now, it'll just have a nice. Now I'm going to add a little bit of quinacridone magenta to the mix. And this makes a really nice gray. A gray purple color. And I'll start bringing that towards the bottom again while it's still wet on wet, just building up my shadow at the bottom. I want to mix up some brown, so I'll take some quinacridone sienna and mix it right into that mix. See how it came into this beautiful deep brown? Isn't that cool? I love how these colors get along. And I'm going to touch this down, just drop it into the bottom here. Just trying to get that dark shadow while it's wet, and let the paint, the watercolor, kind of finish that area. A really good piece of advice I could give is to let your paintings dry as naturally as you can without messing with them too much. A lot of times we go in as they're drying and we want to just keep dabbing at them and dabbing at them, and that doesn't always work well for watercolor, because when you let watercolor just be and you let things dry naturally, you'll get these really cool spontaneous moments happening. Now I'm going to go in with a little bit kind of finishing the shape of the bird, and I'm also going to capture some of these water lines kind of early on. And if I just kiss the top of this and bring some of that shadow down, that's okay too. And just with the wet angle shader brush, I can bring it down and kind of blend it out. And I want to keep an area that comes down light down by his feet. Now I'm going to go, while this is drying I'm going to mix a dark. So I'm going to put some phthalo blue red shade and some quinacridone red and mix it into a nice purple color. And then add a little bit of yellow to it. And the trick is to play with it until you have a nice, rich, deep dark. And that takes pigment, of course. You can't have a super watered down mix and expect it to be a rich color. So see how it's getting thicker as I put more paint. And now when I put that little touch of yellow, it's gotten to this kind of blue-gray color. Just play with it till you get it where you want it. And I'm going to hit this just for 1 second with the dryer again. Not drying it completely, but giving it a little bit. Just so, because if it's completely wet, your paint's going to spread really far, and we don't want it to spread too far.
We have a comment in the chat saying that they're loving these colors.
Oh, yay! That's awesome. Thank you, whoever commented that. That's my favorite part. I always say, if you can get the color, you don't have to worry too much about value and composition. Because if it's colorful, the general public is going to think, oh, those are beautiful colors. If you can get the color and value, you don't have to worry about too much about composition, because usually if you get your color and your value, then that'll pretty much tell the story. But if you can get a good composition, a good color, and a good value, that's where the money is. So, and that just takes time and practice. So I'm going to bring a couple of these lines, but I'm using the wrong brush. I need to be using my liner brush so I can make them a little bit more, there we go, a little bit more expressive. And if you get an area where you don't like how your lines look, just get your angle shader brush wet. Look at that. Forget about it, right? There you go. So you can just go back and forth between your liner brush to give some shadow on the water and some ripples. And then your angle shader brush to blend them and soften them. So you're giving a variety of strokes. You're having some soft lines, you're having some hard lines. And now I can carry that color up, maybe. Still really wet, but let's try a couple. Let's see what happens. Why not give it a little drama? Give it a little bit of area of dark.
Just to let you know, Buffy, we're hitting the 30-minute mark.
How fast this goes.
I know. Time
Well,
flies. You're having fun.
It is fun. I hope you guys can sign up for the workshop. We'll have a little bit more time to spend.
Yes. Our workshops are 90 minutes long, everyone. And you're going to get a recording. And those recordings are available for as long as Etcher is around. So hopefully a really long time. But you'll be able to watch the recording over and over and over so you can make sure that you get these techniques down. It's going to be a wonderful workshop. So go ahead and sign up in the link. And you can also support Buffy by purchasing her digital bundle, which I just dropped the link in the chat as well.
Oh, very nice. And I believe that one of my watercolor reads I showed you earlier is in that bundle. I'm going to hit this again so that I can move a little quickly towards adding the gold. Another thing about letting your paintings dry naturally is I find that there's less of a dry shift if you do it that way. But for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and use that today. So I just erased my pencil lines. And I'm going to bring over the golden set and add a little pizzazz. So I believe this color is the, let's see, the deep gold. I'm going to try the deep gold. I'm just going to get it loaded up on my brush. See how I'm kind of spinning the brush there. Do a couple of tests. It goes on kind of thick, so. Oh, how fun. You know how I was saying the stencil lifting can be a little bit addictive? I think that this gold paint can too. Oh my gosh, look at that. Can you see that? Can you see the, oh my goodness.
Yes, it's so shiny.
It's so shiny. And then, you know, you can soften too. Again, you could take a brush and bring it down if you want and have it, you know, mix and mingle down and create some shadows. Some glimmer that's coming down into the shadows. Ooh, look at that. That's fun. Yes, I love that. This is a good color. Another thing is it's quite opaque when it dries. So if you have an area where it's just gotten so dark and you want to lighten up a little bit or break up a dark area, this, let's see, the deep gold color really provides that. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Then you can also take a little bit of the leftover color, water it down a ton to where it's barely even, just like almost like a gray water. And you could add a little bit of shadow on your bird if you want, just to give them a little bit of definition. And you could put a little bit of dark on that line. Give it some value change. And for the sake of time, I really wanted to show you the stencil lifting technique as well. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this and then show you that also.
Awesome. Thank you, Buffy. This is such a wonderful demo, and we're getting so many amazing tips and techniques. And imagine how many more amazing tips and techniques you're going to get at the workshop. So sign up.
Thank you, Maria. You want to learn more about my techniques and my crazy wanderings into all kinds of watercolor experiments, you can check out my YouTube. It's at Watercolor Pour. And you can see a little bit more about watercolor pouring and get a better idea of the kind of thing we'll be covering in the workshop. So when you're using stencils, like I said earlier, it's a great way to lift up and maybe add an area of interest. For instance, my wet on wet area isn't as defined as I want, but that's okay. I don't mind. I can do this little splatter. Maybe this will suggest that there's some bugs in the air or some floating pollen. So you just have a medium to hard toothbrush and you get it wet with some water. you're going to want to have a paper towel to dry your stencil on, and maybe a little bit of tissue to do some dabbing. And you take your toothbrush, get it wet, give it a dab, and then go to town. You give it a good scrub. So you get it wet, give it a dab, give it a good scrub, and you'll be able to see right through the stencil that it's lifting. And I'm going to take it all the way down to the water line and then pull it up, give it a dab.
Wow.
And you could see how cool. And once your imagination starts going with this, you'll be like, ooh, that's how I could put little divots on rocks. That's how I could add texture to that old brick barn I was, our brick building I was painting. I could add, and there's so many stencils out there.
And does this only work on 100% cotton paper?
Okay, so you would think, but if you have really good sketchbook paper, it can work on that. For instance, this greeting card paper is very similar to what you might find in a sketchbook. And it holds up because I'm scrubbing on this. I'm not being gentle. And that one picture I showed you earlier of what we'll be covering in the workshop, I'll grab it in just a second. That's sketchbook paper. And I was able to lift quite a bit. Here, I'll show you real quick. I'm sorry, it was not sketchbook paper, but this one, yeah, but this one too, you could see, like here, I was doing some reeds and I didn't have time to do a lot of masking. So I was able to create reeds by doing the stencil lifting. But I have done it in some sketchbooks before. If I have time, I'll grab one of my other sketchbooks before. And then this one, the stripes one, I think this is supposed to be like wood grain. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be. But what I found it works really good for is adding some highlights on the water.
Yeah.
Versus having to get some gouache or some white acrylic.
So our audience is super excited about the stencil lifting.
I'm sorry already. Don't be mad if you buy too many stencils.
They're asking what brand the stencils are and what to look for when buying them.
Okay, what to look for when buying them. So these are the Tim Holtz collection, and you can go on stampersanonymous.com. And there's another company that's amazing. I believe it's Stencil Girl, stencilgirl.com. But Ranger Inks, Tim Holtz or Jim Holtz. If any of my students are on right now, will you please put the name of the places that we get our stencils? Like, I believe it's Stencil Girl. But something to look for is that it's plastic. I have some stencils. All right, I'll just show you how addicting it is. So these are like oiled board and they hold up and they're amazing. But most of mine are from the Tim Holtz collection. One of my favorite stencils, oh my goodness, is this one. I believe it's called the Scribble. Let's see if I can just do a piece just to show you how fun it can be. Imagine you have a painting and it just didn't work out and you're not going to keep it around. You could just stencil it and have so much fun with it. So see how it just adds a little unique, I don't know if you could see that or not. See that little, just that little something on your paintings. It could be a lot of fun.
And once you've stenciled, could you go over it with paint again?
Oh, yes. Yes. So for instance, on my reeds, because you can stencil it almost completely to the white of the paper. It just depends. Like I was saying earlier, I use the quinacridones and the phthalos, which are highly staining. So sometimes I can't get it all the way to the white of the paper. But that's okay because that stain just makes it look like it's a little bit lighter part of the water. But if you did take it and then paint, let's say I wanted a little bit of yellow over that spot. Or, ooh, you know, yeah, let's do a little bit of gold. Then yes, you could go right over it and tint it. Isn't that pretty? You could also soften it. So say you do a stencil and you're like, oh, I don't like that. It's too much. You can go right over it with either a wet paintbrush or a little bit of color and then just blend it around. And that'll soften the look of those stencil marks too.
That's really nice.
Yeah. How are we on for time? Are we doing okay?
We are 40 minutes in, so we still have 20.
Okay, so
and people are super excited about stenciling.
It's so fun. It really is. You know what? Since we have time, give me 1 second. I'm gonna grab my current sketchbook to show you some really fun stencil lifting I've done.
Sure. And audience, just a reminder about Buffy's workshop. If you're loving the live demo, because I know I am, you're gonna love her workshop on August 27th. I've dropped the link in the chat. I'm gonna drop it again. And you can sign up and you're gonna learn so much from Buffy and you're gonna get 19 minutes class with her.
Okay, I apologize. I tried very hard to be very formal, but you know what? If you guys are excited about art, I want to share it. So here is, this is just a wet on wet, alla prima, all at once. You start painting, but this is a really good example of a good strong silhouette. If you get the shape right, you don't have to have all the detail. Some more loose flowers. But I know there's some stencil lifting in here. This one was really bold. This was a challenge that I did for a workshop. Here's one that is all stencil lifting in the background. So I did a really dark background and then put a beautiful stencil, a flower stencil on it. And again, you just hold the stencil down, scrub it with the wet toothbrush, and then dab it with a tissue and let it dry. I really like this one, how it came out. This one's really subtle. See how you can just put a little bit of the stenciling just to give it a little area of texture, a little area of interest. This one's neat because this was a 2-color painting. So it was just the quinacridone sienna and the phthalo turquoise.
Oh, wow.
And then this one, you can see the stencil lifting. This was for a live workshop that I did, and the painting was getting away from me. I'm sure you've all experienced that, where you're painting and you're like, oh, this isn't going so good. And then as soon as I started stencil lifting, I just loved it. For instance, all these leaves in the background. You can also go to Amazon.com, and there are, I forgot the name of it, but there's a pack of stencils that are round. So if you put like Amazon circle stencils, there's like 16 of these ones, and they're plastic, so they hold up really well. This one, again, just a really light stenciling in the background, just to add a little texture to it. And that's all I have. Here's another painting where I use similar colors. And this one is in progress. This is going to be a cactus. So anyways, I really hope you guys can sign up for the workshop, because we'll be able to go over all of these techniques and more, to include the watercolor pouring, which is a really great thing to learn, especially if you ever have any struggle with a background. If you don't know how to do successful backgrounds or great gradation, wash, I don't know how you say that. But here's our little card. And now we have about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I think I'll do a quickie if we have the time, Maria.
We have 15 minutes left, so go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so I get my stencils from the, some of them I find on Amazon. And recently I started cutting my own stencils. So for instance, that cactus that I'm working on, I'm using the Cry Cut Maker to create some stencils. So here's a stencil that I did to create some, let me see if I can make it to where you can see it, some of the cactus spikes. And here's one that I made for the sorrel cactus that I'm doing. So that's kind of fun, but that's in progress. I'm still working on that. I think what I'll do, since we're low on time, is I'm just going to make a really pretty background of color, just celebrating this palette that we're playing with today. Maybe take a little bit of, ooh, isn't that neat how it makes the paint separate? So I don't know if you guys saw, but I just grabbed some of that gold. Just let the paint move around. Let's get some quinacridone sienna. So I'm just going to play with color, and then I'll do some stencil lifting to show you how fun it can be, since you guys liked that. Let's do a little bit.
Can, and if you can bring down your camera, but when you can.
Are we there?
Yeah, to the right and a little bit down if possible. To the south. Yeah.
Okay. I had the stencil stuck to my shirt. Okay, at least we're having fun now, right? So as you can see, these colors, it doesn't matter how I put them down on the paper, they just seem to get along so good. So I really love this palette. And I love this golden set. Look at how the gold mixed and mingled in that color blend. And I'm just going to sop up the excess right along the line. I'm going to zap it with my dryer, and then I'm going to do a little bit of stencil lifting. Give me 1 second.
No problem. So everyone, I just dropped you a little tip on the chat, but I'll say it out loud. If you missed Buffy's palette, all of the colors that she mentioned at the beginning, just remember that this live demo will stay up on our YouTube channel. So you can actually go back to the beginning and pause the video when Buffy's talking about it so you can take notes. So that's a hot tip.
I believe in the description section too, you named the colors, if I remember right. So here's a little stencil that I made, kind of, since I do a lot of these style of paintings with the reeds. So I try to do a stencil, and I haven't used it yet. So I'm going to share it with you guys for the first time. Again, just getting my toothbrush wet, holding it firmly down. I'm just going to drag my toothbrush up it. This one's so big that I'm not able to do a little bit at a time. I'm just going for it. So you could also buy matte stencil from like Amazon, or Mr. Art has matte stencil blanks, and you could cut out your own stencils at home. Let's give it a dab and see what it did. Isn't that pretty? Just a nice subtle, see right here, it's just a nice subtle area.
Yeah.
It's not too drastic. But then really quick, since I have a dark area, you know, right here, I can also show you this stencil. And you can really start with a nice abstract base for a painting or a mixed media piece, just by having a beautiful background of color and then doing some stencil lifting.
Those scribbles are so fun.
It's so, isn't that neat? So again, to any of you who end up buying too many stencils today, I apologize in advance. I look forward to our upcoming, let's just see how it looks though. So imagine, especially since these are greeting cards, let's not forget that this is a greeting card. Think of it this way. This beautiful background with the stencil lifting, just pretty colors, right? You could then stamp or do some beautiful script writing, you know, happy birthday or thinking of you, get well soon.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Would be really, really pretty. And these cards, this is a little wet still, but these cards are beautiful because it's completely blank inside. So you can write any sentiment you want or any remembrance you want. And it's an original piece of art that you can send to your friends and family. And let's not forget that awesome gold sparkle. I just love that. I really liked it on this one.
Yeah.
I really liked it on that one. So I don't think I have enough time to do a whole nother card. Does anybody have any questions about what I've shared today or upcoming demos?
If you also have any questions about the content of the workshop, we can go over that right now. Take advantage of these last few minutes with Buffy so we can get all your stenciling question answered, or watercolor pouring, or you can just ask what you'll be learning, or come to the workshop and ask her then.
Yeah. You see, I save any stencils I find anywhere. Like this one I've had for years and I've used it on so many projects. It's just falling apart. And recently, because I'll bring this to class, and recently someone took this and did the most beautiful art piece with it. So you can really find them all over. You can buy, there's also wall mural stencils that people use to decorate walls, like for baby rooms, offices, things like that. This was one of those. It was a great big stencil. And so what I did was cut it into multiple pieces to use for forest scenes. So yeah, another site you can get stencils is thecraftersworkshop.com.
So we have a question here regarding your hairdryer.
Oh, yes.
So if you can give the name out.
It is the Ranger Heated Craft Tool. And Ranger is, they partner with the Jim Holtz. So a lot of times if you go to Ranger Inks to their website, you could get this and probably pick up a couple stencils while you're there.
And what do you use to cut the stencils?
I used, it's called a Cry-Cut Maker, and it's the Cry-Cut machine. You see a lot of people doing vinyl decals and transfers. They do all kinds of craft projects. So it's CRICUT. And the one that I have is a Cry-Cut Maker. And I buy the matte stencils from Mr. Art, and you can enter your own designs and then cut the stencils yourself. So you can do some really cool projects with that.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. And here, just to recap what we worked on today.
All right, everyone, I'm going to drop the workshop link again in case you lost it in the chat. So here it is again. Remember, our workshops are 19 minutes long. It's going to be on August 27th, and you're going to get an overview of the technique of watercolor pouring as well as more stencil lifting. So it's going to be awesome. Then I am also going to drop a link to our survey so you can drop us your comments. And I am going to drop one final link for Buffy's digital downloads, the digital print. So you can choose to support her there. So here we go, all of our links. Now I'm going to put your face again, Buffy, since
Okay.
so we can see you.
Hi. I really did try and be as formal as I could, but once you guys said you love the stenciling, oh gosh, I was ready to go shopping with all of you.
We all get excited about art supplies.
Right. Really quick, this last image, you can see how subtle you can do the stencil lifting. So it doesn't have to be over the top, mixed media. You know, it could also be just very soft and a beautiful way to add some texture to your landscapes.
Yes, definitely. No, it's been really, really beautiful. Your Instagram handle is also at Watercolor Pour?
Yes.
Perfect. Then I'll also drop that on the chat.
Okay.
So you can watercolor OU, right?
OR.
OR.
Mm-hmm.
There.
Yeah.
So then thank you so much everyone for coming today. We have really loved having you, Buffy. This has been a delightful demo filled with tips and tricks, and it's just been fascinating to see a brand new technique, at least for me, in watercolor. I've never seen this before, so it's fascinating to see it done and all the cool things that you can do with it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. And to everyone who tuned in, thank you so much for supporting Etcher and this wonderful thing that they're doing for all the art community. If you haven't checked out the rest of their channel, I really recommend it. There's so much diversity in what's offered, from your sketchbooks to watercolor to traditional art to very contemporary. So urban sketching, it's awesome. So highly recommend them.
Thank you so much for that recommendation. And remember, everyone, we're launching fountain pens. So if you're interested in more art supplies, we are launching fountain pens very, very soon. Now, if you want to try Buffy's techniques and you want to tag us on all of your socials, make sure to use #@YourStudio so that we can see what you created today. And thank you so much, everyone. Please sign up for Buffy's demo, and we'll see you for another Etcher Live demo soon. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
We